I just want to impart that I would love if all of you listeners, you students at the U of A, like stuck around Tucson to help make it a better place. Like we're investing heavily in the city. We're building yet another new restaurant, like right in downtown, like right in the heart of Tucson, Arizona, because I believe in it. I think it's a great place to live and raise your families. And if more U of A students chose to stick around Tucson and build their roots and set up their families, it would be a better place for everybody.
Hey Wildcats, welcome back to the UAZ Podcast. This afternoon we have an exciting guest, Grant. He is the founder of the Union Hospitality Group here in Tucson, and he graduated from the University of Arizona in 1999. So he's a proud Wildcat. We're super excited to have him. And also, he has been working in this business for so many years, so he has got so much experiences. And so we're here to share with you some of his experiences, whereby he's going to talk about his businesses, his successes, experiences, and some of like the risks or the leadership stuff that he has gone through for him to build such a successful business here in Tucson. I know when you have a business, it comes with so much risks, but now we want to dive into that and learn from him, because I know that so many of you out there want to start businesses in different industries. Some of you want to go into restaurants, hospitality, and in different angles in life. And so I think he's one of the great person that we can learn from, since he has gone through this and he's still in the business, still scaling up, which is great. So today's topic is about building across borders, risks, leadership, and growth. And we're really super excited to have him. I'm Rebecca, and I have my colleagues here with me.
Hi, I'm Nicole Camacho.
Hi, I'm Seliat.
Okay, so for our first question, what really inspired you to go into this business, given that you came from another state, from San Carlos to Tucson? Like, what inspired you to take on that business, or to just be in this industry?
Sure. So I've always loved the restaurant business. I started at 14 years old. So this is my 35th year in the restaurant business. Now you can do the math and how old I am. I'm going to dox myself right here, right from the start. So I started at 14 years old as a dishwasher, right? And busboy. And I feel like even 35 years later, I'm still washing dishes and bussing tables, just on a slightly larger scale, right? I was lucky enough to be able to work in a restaurant that happened to be just immediately behind my parents' home. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. And my parents weren't incredibly wealthy, and I had to work at a young age to help pay my bills. And I really wanted to buy a car, Rebecca. I was really into it. So at 14 years old, I found a restaurant that was just across the alleyway from my parents' home. And this was back in 1990. So they didn't check IDs all that much. So I kind of fudged my age and said I was 16. And because I could walk to work, I got away with it for almost an entire year. Until they kept asking me for the taxes. Hey, we need a copy of your driver's license. We need a copy of your driver's license. And of course, I didn't have one. So I had to, like, after a month of stalling, sheepishly admit that I was only 15 at this time. But by then, I was already their best busboy. So they were like, we'll pay you in cash for a while. I feel like the statute of limitations has probably passed after 35 years. So I got by as starting as a dishwasher, worked my way into busser and then server, right? It's kind of the hierarchy of how restaurants work, and there tends to be a little more money in the front of house than the back. And I'm a people person too. I love people and working with people. And so a front of house job is a natural fit for somebody that's an extrovert, right? That loves to talk to people, loves to be out there and shake hands and kiss babies. And so after working for 4 years all through high school, I came out to Tucson, Arizona to come to the University of Arizona, Bear Down, and got a job in St. Philip's Plaza at River and Campbell, where 3 of my restaurants currently are now. And I was both a waiter and a bartender at 2 different restaurants that existed in that plaza. And so where Union Public House is today, like where we own, which is probably one of our most noted restaurants here in Tucson, I was a waiter in that building back in the mid-1990s when it was Daniel's, which was Dan Scordato from Vivace fame's first restaurant. So it's pretty cool to like have been the waiter and kind of come full circle all the way around and eventually own the business. I find that a lot of successful people in the restaurant business came from the bottom, just how I did as well too, right? Having that level of practical experience really helps you out, because you learn so much in working for other people in the industry. You learn both what to do in some cases, Rebecca, you learn what not to do as well, too. There were plenty of not to do's over the years as well. But I was lucky enough to work on the opening team of a couple different Italian restaurants in Detroit as we grew into a couple different locations. And then I was on the opening team of this brewery that was in St. Philip's Plaza called Breckenridge Brewery. And so the neat part about having done so many of those restaurant openings was that it no longer was really that scary for you anymore. Probably by 19 years old, I had already worked on, I think, 4 restaurant openings, which was way more than somebody else my age. And having friends in professional sports, right, at the highest level. I have friends that are NBA players and NFL players, and they tell me, they go, eventually, the first game you have, everything seems so fast and scary. Everyone is so powerful, and it's bigger than they were in high school and faster than they were in college. But after a while, it sort of slows down to you, and it just becomes the new normal. And I liken business openings like this, too. It's terrifying, especially to most people. It's a big financial risk, and there's a lot of moving parts. But eventually you learn when those terrors or pitfalls are going to come up, and you adapt. And I was lucky enough to, after graduating from the University of Arizona in 1999 from Eller School of Business, I was lucky enough to be able to start my first restaurant immediately after college. Now, for most people, entrepreneurship isn't necessarily something that they're looking for with a college degree, right? You're saying, hey, I want to work for some other company. But I was worried at the time, and I still worry to this day, about Tucson and its growth, its job availability, right? So many of my friends from Eller left Tucson after graduating, and they went to the Scottsdales, or they went to the LAs of the world, wherever there were jobs and more financial opportunities. And it's always worried me about our city that we have this brain drain, right? Our best and brightest, like you guys sitting right here at the table with me, are probably going to leave Tucson in some capacity because maybe we don't have the corporate headquarters or the jobs that we would like. And so getting my business degree, I interviewed with a lot of firms. I was ready to work in high yield debt, investment banking, right? I remember like serving my last beer, being like, haha, this is it, guys. Like, we're done. Never serving another beer. And when you make statements like that, you know, fate has a funny way of slapping you back down. Right?
I'm done.
And I had always loved our proximity to Mexico, right? In being only 45 minutes away from the border, I enjoyed going down to Mexico. I liked like learning another culture, another language, the sunshine. I loved scuba diving, right? Was a big fan of Mexico. And so I took Spanish classes here through the University of Arizona. They had the program where you could go to Guadalajara. I'm not so sure if they still do that now, and you could stay with a host family. And
they still have it now.
Okay, cool. And so we went down to Guadalajara in 1997 with a friend of mine. We took the train. They definitely don't have the train anymore, but it ran from Nogales to Guadalajara. And we took the train down to Mexico, right, and spent a whole summer in Guadalajara and studied Spanish. And I took another business course taught by a tenured U of A professor. His name is Robert Tyndall. He's passed away, but he was a great, great professor here and had worked at Harvard. And this guy was a real brain, right? And this was like a management and policy course that was one of those pre-session courses, those like knockout 3 credit and 2.5 week type things. And he taught this course in San Carlos, Sonora, Mexico. And so I was like, ooh, another Mexico summer course. I was on pace to finish my university education in about 2.5 years because I'm paying for my own college. I found out that it was the same price whether you took 12 units or 15 units or 18 or 21 or 24 units. And so I was like, well, let's just load them up, right? You got to get signed in by the dean if you take more than 18. But if you get A's, they'll let you do it. And so I stacked my schedule to graduate as quickly as I could and took a lot of summer and pre-session courses as well too. And I took this course in Mexico, thinking it was just going to be a Mexico experience and a quick way to knock out 3 credits. And as it turned out, Dr. Tyndall owned a house and a sailboat in San Carlos. So there was some, some additional incentive about why he had picked this location. I didn't know at the time, but it made sense now. And I really loved the experience and ended up moving down to San Carlos after graduating in December of 1999. And we were able to open up our first restaurant, which was called the Marina Cantina. And it was right in the harbor of Marina San Carlos. It's about 6.5 hours south of here. I had to brush up on my Spanish. I knew enough to order beers and ask where the bathrooms were. I was fine in Rocky Point, but I wasn't like built for international business level Spanish at that time. But we had to hire 25 employees to start the business, and their English wasn't so good. So it was either me get better at Spanish or them get better at English. And I figured easier for me than it was to expect that out of others. And when you move to another country, it's also respectful to learn their language, right? Their contracts are in Spanish. Business is done in Spanish. Like, this is just the way it's got to be. And so I got a real quick life lesson about how my college Spanish wasn't quite good enough to do in business. But after a period of time, over the course of a year or so, my Spanish got strong enough to where now I can watch a soccer game and understand everything they're saying, right? That makes a big difference. And I actually get to be on TV even regularly now. I do a lot of, even in our current careers. I work with TV Estrella and TV Azteca over the years in various Spanish-speaking TV stations, and we have done all kinds of partnerships and appearances and whatnot, because I recognize, even back when I was working as a waiter in the 1990s, the importance of Mexico on Tucson's economy. Tourism from Sonora is a really big deal, right? The wealthy from Ciudad Obregón, Hermosillo, and these cities would come up to Tucson for their restaurants and for the shopping. Back when shopping malls were a thing, and I'm dating myself by even saying that, you would go to the malls here, and it would be a third Sonoran plates or Sinaloan license plates. Like, it was obvious if you were paying attention. And of course, in our geopolitical climate, often, we talk about borders and border enforcement and these sort of things, but they're two separate animals, right? Like, legal tourism, spending money in Tucson is an incredibly important thing. And in fact, I think it's something that we've forgotten about over the years and often took for granted, just how much Mexican tourism was here in Tucson. And even to this day, like, the wealthy Sonorans that come to all of our restaurants represent a really significant part of the economy. And so we were lucky enough to have that restaurant in Mexico for a decade. The business did well, and we bought the location next door and made the restaurant twice as big, which doesn't always work out for you, but it did in that case. We were lucky, and that worked out. We turned it into purchasing additional land. I bought and built the largest self-storage complex probably in the state of Sonora, maybe even in Mexico at the time, because that industry was in its infancy. And so we built a few hundred units. It's not a sexy business. You get mini storage lockers and things, but we noticed a need that ultimately there was a lot of people coming down in these new condo towers that everybody were building in Mexico, and they didn't have a place to store their jet skis or fishing equipment or kiteboarding equipment or scuba or fishing, whatever it might be. And so we, recognizing that need, built that and did that business. We started a construction company and built a number of homes in the San Carlos area. And we were really on quite a roll until really 2009. And we got clipped by a hurricane, right? September 3rd and 4th, 2009. Hurricane Jimena devastates San Carlos, just devastates it. If anybody listening ever works in floodplains management or building homes, they talk about the 50-year flood or 100-year floodplains, right, where you can't build in a wash and this kind of stuff. So Hurricane Jimena hit Sonora and was the 500-year flood. Doesn't mean that it couldn't happen again next year, but the likelihood is once every 500 years. The average annual rainfall in Sonora might be 11 or 12 inches, and we got about 4 feet of rain inside of 2 days. And so it crushed our town. I mean, it flooded our home and destroyed our home. It carried furniture out into the ocean in a way. It wrecked our self-storage business. It was an absolute unmitigated disaster. It was probably the first time I got really clipped and humbled in business and life, because instantly you would say, well, don't you just have insurance for that?
I wanted to ask that. Won't the insurance cover that?
However, insurance is a different animal in Mexico than it is in the United States. Flood insurance particularly is a squirrely one that isn't even baked into a lot of your traditional mortgage insurances. And in fact, the private sector of insurance would most likely not even offer flood insurance, Rebecca, except for the fact that the federal government ends up backing all of these mortgages, right? Like the idea that there are mortgage-backed securities with the federal government, they reinforce the private companies to offer flood insurance as a separate policy for coastal properties. But in other countries in the world, things like floods are specifically excluded from many of the general liability insurance policies at all. And so it was not even a policy we could have bought. Wow. I think about that often over the years, right? But this is...
And how does the government comes in to support such a business? Because it's a profit, but you're supporting the community. So doesn't the government comes in to support you when you're in that
Unfortunately not. The governments aren't there to necessarily prop up the private sector. And you wouldn't necessarily want them to either, right? Because if they chose and they supported your business, but not your business, you could see where there could be some favoritism over here, right?
Yeah.
Like quickly there would be the possibility of abuse. And so we weren't insured for that kind of flood and took tremendous losses, right? We went from being like, what kind of new fancy car or plane should I buy today to, oh my gosh, like we might be bankrupt and absolutely toast over here that quickly overnight. And this kind of ups and downs happen to you in the entrepreneurship world, right? Yeah. It's not always a smooth ride. One of the benefits of working for somebody else is that in general your salary never really goes down, right? You get this cost of living increase every year, getting 3%, 5%, something tied to CPI, but it's going up. When you own your own business, it's a real up and down. You could have some tremendous ups, but you could also have some tremendous downs on any given moment. And of course, if things don't go well, the first person to not get paid in the company, this guy right over here, right? It's just the way it goes. And so you've really got to have a little more risk tolerance, right? In life, there's this risk-reward relationship. And some people are gamblers and gunslingers. And other people are like, no, I don't want that variation at all. Like, I'm on the straight and narrow. I'm very happy to live like that, right? And in my case, like I think I'm a little bit more on the entrepreneurial gunslinger side of things, because just to do things like restaurants that have such a high failure rate, right? With over 80% of restaurants closing inside of their first 5 years of operation, that's a pretty daunting number, right? Everybody thinks they want to be their own boss, but what they want is the boss part of it. Right? They'll see me and say, oh, you must sit around and just taste fine wine and sample which of these prime meats should be on our next menu, right? And while there's a tiny...
And sign off documents.
Right. There's a tiny bit of that. But I assure you, probably some of the best, most gourmet meals I've ever had at my own restaurants from some of the great chefs we've had work for us over the years have occurred like eating over the top of a trash can really quickly, like running between meetings or greeting customers or, hey, taste this or do that. It's not sexy like you might imagine, right? I have the privilege of being able to speak at the U of A Business School somewhat regularly now at Eller, and I really enjoy the opportunity, right? I love to connect with the students. I love to find ways that I can get them to build their own businesses in Tucson. Stick around maybe, right? Put your roots here, raise your families here. Super cool stuff, right? And I often tell the kids at Eller, I say, guys, like, it isn't like what it looks like now. You see me in the suit, but like last night, I just cleaned vomit out of the waterless urinal sort of thing. And this is, as a business owner, 35 years into it, like you never are that far removed from your business. Or at least if you're going to be successful, you're not that far removed from it, right? You've got to really have your finger on the pulse, particularly of the restaurant business. You'd said that your mom had worked in restaurants before we went live over here. And I spend a lot of time actually talking people out of it if they don't have any industry experience. I will get wealthy doctors, lawyers, orthodontists, right? And they'll say, hey, Grant, I got $1 million in grandma's lasagna recipe. And every time I make grandma's lasagna, like, for a dinner party, everyone says it's the best thing they ever ate and that I should open a restaurant. And I tell them, sir, or ma'am, you know what? You should continue to just eat at really nice restaurants. Like, this would be
sometimes the people are not genuine. They're just telling you it's really nice so that they make you feel better. So
yes. So I often talk successful business people out of it if you're not ready for the lifestyle, right? If you've had this 9-to-5 type job and your life is built around that, like all of a sudden the restaurant business comes at you and you think, I know food or I know nice wine or whatever it might be, I could own a restaurant. But you're also trading nights, weekends, and holidays, right? One of the great things that I think we get the opportunity to do is actually to work with so many of you guys as students, because when do you have off from school? Nights, weekends, and holidays, right? When do we need the most people in the restaurant business? Those same 3 time periods, right? It's such a symbiotic relationship for students. It probably is the greatest paying job, and this is not an advertisement to come work for it. But it's probably the greatest paying job that a student could have in terms of dollar per hour compensation, combined with the schedule flexibility as well, too, right? You got a big final exam coming up 2 weeks from now. You could request that time off and block it out, and generally those requests will be accepted. We work around those flexibilities really well. And so over the years, it's been great to get to work with so many young people in the restaurant business and watch them grow. From 18 years old, and they come as a hostess, and everyone's a little shy. You guys, we're talkers in the restaurant business, but you guys come out of the digital world where everything is Zoom and there's a little less interpersonal communication. So often, the first month or so of my hostesses, I'm trying to get them to come out of their shell. You got to look people in the eye, shake a hand, kiss a baby, right? And it's amazing to see that they'll start there, and within 2 years, they're this boss bartender, calling shots, biting back at the sassy customer every once in a while, knowing all the recipes, putting it together, and that growth, I think, is really awesome. I've often hypothesized that if you can work in the restaurant business, the skill sets that you develop working with the general public, right? Talking your way out of situations that are messy, right? I could come to you and say, hey, Nicole, guess what? Grandma's been waiting 37 minutes for her pork chop. Everybody else at table 6 has their meal. They just dropped the pork chop on the floor. It's going to be another 12 minutes to cook it. Go there and be likable and stall, right? And you've got to do that. That's like a thing, right? And so when you can do that, when I say, hey, you got to go work at a law firm and litigate, hey, you've got to go work in sales. Hey, you've got to go... Those soft human skill sets that are developed in the customer service world apply to every facet of business that you have in your life later. And I think we create employees for others, essentially, kind of like how the hockey team, the Roadrunners, are the minor league team to the NHL. We're sort of the minor leagues to a certain degree for other people's career paths, where upon graduation at 22, 23 years old, so many of my servers and bartenders end up sticking around even for another year or two in some cases because the money is so good, right? And they actually find that part enjoyable. Maybe they don't want to be a server or bartender their whole lives, but it doesn't stink still, like that lifestyle, knowing people. So long, of course, as you're willing to sacrifice your nights and your weekends and your holidays. Because we don't get to pick when we're busy, right? The guests pick when we're busy.
So, when did you start in Tucson? Because I know you worked in Sonora for quite a number of years, and then you had these challenges with the business. Did you start immediately in Tucson, or you had started before that?
So I started our restaurants in Tucson in 2010, right after the hurricane. We moved up to Tucson. I actually managed the self-storage business still for a number of years and was traveling back and forth between Mexico and the United States. But my daughters, you met one of them. One of them was starting kindergarten at that time and had just started in Sonora. And at the Colegio Americano, it was half the day in English and half the day in Spanish. And I really wanted them to grow up bilingual, right? I'm bilingual, I can understand Spanish, but I'm always going to have this gringo accent. It's inevitable. I'm from the Midwest, right? It just is there.
Yes.
And so I wanted my daughters to grow up 100% bilingual, right? And know that and have English and Spanish. And so at Ventana Vista Elementary School here in Tucson, they had this Spanish immersion program that was half the day in English and half in Spanish. We had maintained a small residence up here in Tucson, like even while we lived in Mexico, mostly because the internet was sort of in its infancy back then. You couldn't order anything online to be delivered in Mexico. And so we needed places like a sort of staging area to buy parts and pieces for the business and all these things. And we ended up moving up to that house after the hurricane because it was such a real tragedy down there in Mexico. I mean, people died. It was pretty ugly. And while I was rebuilding down in Mexico the self-storage business, we registered my daughter for kindergarten up here. And by the time I get it all rebuilt and ready to go, she likes her school. My other little daughter likes her preschool. My wife at the time is like, maybe we should stay here in Tucson. And I had the opportunity to go back to St. Philip's Plaza, where I had been a waiter those years before. Right? And I had developed a relationship with the owner of the plaza while he was a customer in years past. He would sit up at the bar and he would read the Wall Street Journal, and being an Eller guy, I'd sit and talk stocks with him. And so I was able to rekindle that relationship and have discussions with him. And he had known of our restaurants in Mexico and had said, look, Grant, you've always been a good business person. And I think there's an opportunity for a space to come up in St. Philip's Plaza. And it was amazing. And I think it was one of the really big life lessons that I've learned that I'd like to share with your listeners is that in life, sometimes it's not about what you know, it's really about who, right? And developing the who's, your sort of Rolodex, your list of contacts that know you and who you are becomes such an important asset to you, right? That as you guys move out and start applying for jobs, everyone's got a great looking resume these days. Everyone's using AI to build it, right? Like, let's be honest. I get hundreds of resumes now every week and they all look the same. What can you do to differentiate yourself, right? And that comes from the personal relationships. These are why we want our kids to go to college, right? I want you to develop personal relationships with others outside of your little bubble that was high school. It's time to meet others that have like interests in mind, right? Whether it be your major or career path or just other people. And so having those relationships become one of the most important things for you in life and in business. And having just been a kind person to this individual years before, as truly like a hospitable customer service, pays off to where he looked at my body of work as a restaurateur and said, you had built a great place. I'd love for you to be a tenant here in the plaza. And I remembered that brewery that I had worked at in years past, this Breckenridge Brewery, and thought, a pub concept could be great here. In years past, it had been a very successful restaurant, but it was huge, Rebecca. This thing was 2 stories, 10,000 square feet. And 2 stories is real tough for restaurants. You don't want a 2-story restaurant, right? You got 1 kitchen, right? But 2 floors. So it's a lot of time on the stairs, right? Everyone says, I want a side of ranch. And you're like, oh no, right? All the way down, all the way back up. So I promised myself, and one of the life lessons of the things, what not to do, as we said, I will never do a 2-story restaurant. Like, never will I ever, right, do that. And so I said, we'll build a pub. We'll do it 1-story, right? And it's adjacent to this beautiful plaza at River and Campbell, sort of southeast corner. And we had the opportunity to open up our first restaurant in the United States. And it was great. I think I learned so much about doing business in Mexico because there was very little business-to-business infrastructure. When you think of doing business in the United States, if you show up at a restaurant, any place in town at 8, 9 in the morning, there's nothing but 54-foot trailers out there, right? It's the Shamrock Foods and the Cisco Foods and the Merit Foods and the various liquor distributors and the soda trucks. Everybody in the United States is willing to sell you something 24 hours a day. You can even get picky about it, right? You can be like, I only accept trailers between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. because then we're too busy for lunch rush. And don't you come sell me at that time. And so there's so many people willing to sell it to you. They'll be like, okay, I'll do it. In Mexico, it wasn't like that at all. We were we were farm to table before it was cool to be farm to table. And we weren't that way because it was a sexy concept. We were farm to table because that's how you got food. I would have to go to like where the chickens and the turkeys were raised in Hermosillo and be like, I'll take those ones over there. Like, go kill them kind of thing, right? Like to get the food we needed, it was a lot more effort. And so coming up to the United States and understanding the business-to-business services that were available to us here, it made that element of the business so much easier when your supply chain was willing to come to you rather than you coming to them. Big difference.
Yes.
But I learned a lot of lessons about scale as well, too. We were a smaller restaurant in Mexico. We had 15 tables in, 15 tables out. Right? So decent size, but I could work all the tables. I could take care of everybody that came in the front door. And we did. And for the better portion of a decade, that was kind of how I ran the business, right? I worked it, day to night, and every single day we were open and kind of, let's call it micromanaging, I guess. And I thought that was how I had to run the business. And when you're one and you're small, you probably do have to run it that way. But I remember our first night in business, November 3rd, 2011 at Union, right? Well, technically it's been our third night because we'd opened a soft open on Halloween, and the first couple of days went really well, and I managed it just like I did all the other restaurants, right? I was on top of all the tables and took care of them and shook hands and kissed babies, and everything went really well. Until that night, November 3rd, right? It's like the second worst day of my life ever in the restaurant business. And it's a perfect patio weather, right? It's November, the weather's great, all the doors are open into this beautiful St. Phil's Plaza. Every single table filled up in and out. And the kitchen folds like a cheap tent. Ticket times start to crest. It's 20 minutes, and then it's 25. 30, 35, 45. Table 6 needs to talk to you, complaint. Table 7 needs to talk to you, complaint. Table 8's got a problem here, complaint. And right about the time I think that this is going pretty badly for me, one of my waiters grabs his knee and goes, and he falls to the ground and says, I've hurt my knee. I can no longer continue on my shift. You have to pick up all of my tables as well, too. And this guy's got like a 6-table section and a private dining event, and he's drowning. And all of a sudden I'm trying to pick up his tables who all have 40-minute ticket times and are upset and be likable. And I'm taking dishes back to the dish station. And at that moment, I realized that if I didn't change my management style, I was going to fail. That we weren't going to make it as a restaurant. That I couldn't micromanage it in the same way that I did the smaller place, right? I needed more managers. I needed to train them well to do this particular job. And we really had to learn some great lessons about that. And so we rebuilt and recovered, right? Everyone can have a bad shift once in a while, and we bounced back, but only after pivoting and really changing how we did our business. And only through those lessons do we get the opportunity to grow with what we have now. And so we own Union Public House, we're Reforma Modern Mexican, we own Proof Artisanal Pizza and Pasta, we own the Maverick on the east side as well over at Grant and Tanque Verde, and we're currently building a new restaurant down at the former Hi-Fi Kitchen and Cocktail Space at 345 East Congress. It's right at the corner of Congress and 4th Avenue. So pretty awesome location that'll be open in just a couple months.
So from what you said, I observed that you were a servant leader style of a person, like your leadership style is servant leader. And I know how much your practical experience influenced that, but how much did your college degree, business administration, influence that? How much did the degree contribute to your success as that kind of leader?
That's a great question. We often think about the efficacy even of college degrees these days, right? There's a lot of blowback on that. But I do think that there was value in my college degree, in spite of not ending up working in investment banking, right? In this high finance world. I do think the accounting background of a business degree really helps you manage your books to begin with. Like up front, the restaurant business is a very low margin business, right? 2, 3, 4% profit margin if done correctly. And so you could have beautiful food and beautiful service, but not be doing it inside of this correct cost range and losing money and go out to business very quickly. So being an effective, let's say, bean counter, right? A candidate where you've got to really manage the finances there couldn't be a business almost more important than that. particularly because our input costs change regularly. The price of steak moves like the stock market, right? The price of chicken, the price of ground beef, the price of pork are all variable on so many different things. You could have a supply chain disruption. I've had weeks, months where we had things like, sorry, the cartels in Mexico have taken over the lime production and we can't get limes this week. What? And the same kind of thing has happened with avocados. We've seen tariffs recently, right, on product that you can't get from the United States. So like I can't exactly buy an American coffee because we don't grow coffee beans in the United States. We might roast them here, but we don't grow it. So that's coming from some other country. I can't get an American tequila at Reforma, right? Like it's made in Mexico. And so there are certain things that are outside of our control, but that radically change our prices. And you've got to really watch that. If you just run the same menu year after year after year, your menu is fixed. It's this piece of paper. With the prices that are fixed on there. It would look really tacky if I was constantly crossing out the price every time we had an increase. But it could cost you thousands of dollars to print the menu, so like you just kind of eat it in terms of the cost, if that makes sense. But if you eat it too long, you could end up selling dishes not profitably. I could be paying you to eat the osso buco or something like that. Like in all honesty, that could happen. So really staying on top of your costs is a really, really important lesson that I do think in business school helped. I also think the group work, Eller was really big at that time on group projects. I imagine they probably still...
I did my marketing minor with Ella, so they still do a lot of group projects.
Yeah. I feel like learning how to play nicely in the same sandbox with others is like a skill set as well too. You could be a genius, right? You could be the number one player on the team, but if you're a locker room cancer, right? Like you're going to be a problem and not an asset to the company. And so I think some of those group projects really helped me out as well too. And while certainly we don't use every part of our degree, probably nobody does, the restaurant business is every facet of business that you could think of. It's a manufacturing facility using just-in-time theories of product management, right? Inventory control. But yet we also have to deal with the sales and marketing and accounting to it all. So it's really like every facet of business all happening under one roof, right? It's all of the above, the entire circle of purchasing and then improving those raw input goods into food and service, selling it, marketing it, cleaning up, and doing it all over again. So I think there's more benefit than you might think with that one. And I've always recommended that business degrees are one that people should take a look at if you've got interest in that. I think there's, even in today's world, even with AI and whatnot, I think there's still applicability to it.
I find it interesting how Mexicans come to America for opportunity and finding job, but in your situation, you went to Mexico to find opportunity. So what made you I know that you spoke about going on abroad and learning the culture there. So was it the culture, the food, the people? What made you drive and live in Mexico to start your new journey?
All the above there, but also a woman. Let's be honest here. That also helps once in a while. And so the mother of my daughters, was from there. We met while I was in college, and at that time through Dr. Tyndall and that particular class actually as well. And so that helped as well too. Like I felt that she would have been sort of unemployable up here in the United States, or I was sort of unemployable in Mexico. I wasn't going to go get a job for someone else. There are actually work permits in the same way we have a green card, right? There's a FM3 Lucrativa, which is your working documents that you can live for more than 181 days a year in Mexico and then also work. And so I actually had to go through the immigration process the other way around. And I find it quite interesting as well, too, because Mexico had some challenges on that process. Well, that wasn't as easy as you might have imagined. And the irony of that doesn't escape me when we think of it coming on the other side as well, too.
So when you returned back to Tucson, what was the one big vision that you were looking to actually achieve with your business?
So I, of course, wanted to build another restaurant. And I wanted to learn from the mistakes that I had seen at this brewery and figure out some ways to do this on my own. I didn't want to start brewing my own beer. I recognized that there were a lot of breweries, and we see a lot of microbreweries here, and that's actually a really hard thing to do. Being a brewer and being a restaurateur are almost mutually exclusive skill sets. They're not even exactly the same thing. You make beer, you're like a chemist and a janitor put together. It's 90% cleaning, because the same temperatures that we use to pitch the yeast in beer fermentation are the same temperatures that bacteria form in the various tanks. And so you're like the super duper janitor cleaner. And that guy isn't necessarily the gregarious outgoing person that you need to run a restaurant. But they make the beer, people enjoy the beer, and they start saying, can I have something to eat with this beer? And you start with a bag of pretzels. Pretty soon it turns into, I want a hamburger and fries, and all of a sudden you're a restaurant. So I knew I wasn't going to make my own beer, but I wanted to build a friendly, approachable pub concept that actually made their own food, like real cooking. One of the things that I'm very prideful that we do in our restaurants is that it's nearly full scratch. We bake our own bread, we cure our own bacon, we make our own pasta in-house. I don't make everything from house. We're not making our own ketchup or mayonnaise, right? Could I? Of course. But people honestly want Heinz ketchup. Actually, they want Hunt's ketchup, but they think they want Heinz ketchup. But for that level, there's a cost-benefit analysis, right? But we're what I call mostly scratch kitchen. And I think that's pretty rare these days. Most of the time, you can get food from these major food purveyors where it's partially cooked or frozen or whatnot. And if you go to a lot of sports pub concepts in town, it's just frozen chicken nuggets out of the Cisco bag dumped into the deep fryer. And I love that we're not that in Union Hospitality Group. I'm a big fan of cooking and making real food.
What's your favorite part of owning a restaurant? Is it meeting people? I know prior recording you were telling us that you have so many friends, whether it's in the NBA, politicians. So what's your kind of favorite part about owning a business?
I love that part of things, Nicole. I love meeting people, right? And getting to hear their stories, even though I'm doing a lot of talking today and telling my story. I love hearing people's stories. I love the fact that like relationships existed because they met in our restaurant. I've been in this business so long. There are children that exist that are like your age because their parents met like in one of my restaurants. And you think about that weird butterfly effect about like, wow, had we not done this, like these people wouldn't exist. Like pretty crazy, right? Like pretty deep stuff. But in general, what I love most about the business is that for most guests, going out to eat is one of the best experiences of their week. I get to see you professionally for your date night, for happy hour, for your birthday, for your wedding anniversary, right? If I was a lawyer, I would get to see you when you were going bankrupt or getting divorced. If I was a doctor, I would be telling you you have cancer, right? Like I get to see people in what is, for most people, if they're good people at least, one of the more enjoyable parts of their entire week or month perhaps, right? And so it's just on us to like roll with those good vibes and make that great. And I love creating those vibes and that experience for people to enjoy.
I've actually never really thought about restaurant job like that. I never, because of course, if you have any celebrations to do, you go to the restaurant to celebrate. Yep. But as a doctor, you're most likely telling somebody they have cancer or they're about to die or something, and I find that very incredible. Yeah. That's really
and for the most part, when we're in the full service restaurant world, like what I generally do, it's not just about the food or the beverage. It's not purely transactional. Right? If you go to Chipotle, it's truly transactional. I'm not knocking Chipotle over here. My daughter loves Chipotle. I will take her there anytime. But like you're there for the burrito and that's it. You're in and out. You're not there for the music or the seating or the environment or to see or to be seen, right? Like it's truly like, hey, I got to fill the hole over here. I'm hungry and I got class in 32 minutes. And so I'm going for that. When you're going out to dine somewhere or going out to a bar or a club, like, yes, we monetize your experience in selling food and beverages. That's how I pay the light bill and pay the servers. But you're really selling more than the sum of just the hamburger or the espresso martini, right? You're truly selling the experience. It's the live music and the dancing and the other people. You're both being seen. You get to see others and look them up and down. What's she wearing? And what are they having over there at table 6? And like, that's a thing, right? Like human beings, we're social creatures by nature. Some more than others, but as a sweeping generalization, we are social creatures and we like to be around others. And that's really why people go to restaurants and bars, particularly when it comes to the full service side of things. You could cook cheaper at your house than I could sell you a bottle of wine and a steak. There's no question. You're doing it for other reasons than that, right? It's because we all get to order whatever we want, and you're gluten-free, and you're a vegan vegetarian, and you don't have pork, and I don't like onions or whatever it might be, and like the meal can cover that.
Yes.
Right, which is pretty neat. If we were cooking at home, I might not even be able to make us one.
I have to wash the dishes. I don't want to wash the dishes.
So all those things I think are like this huge benefit to going out. It's all part of the experiential part of the entertainment value. And what I like is when people can break bread together and have conversations and enjoy themselves. So often we get tied up in the hurry of our daily lives. And I've got the hurry of trying to get out your food in a specific time, right? We have our standards, like of how I expect a lunch and how long it takes to prepare and dinner. And sometimes I can't always hit those standards because there's just a lot of orders that come that are in front, a big table in front of you. And we'll stress and we'll be in the kitchen like, oh my God, this is a 24-minute ticket time. We've got to hurry up, team. Let's go. And people are swearing and they're hurried and they're trying to move. And then we get to the table and it's all you guys and like everyone's having a conversation over a bottle of wine and they're laughing and like they didn't even notice. Like these like details that we were so stressed about because we were trying to achieve this standard. And truly, the guests were actually enjoying each other's company. The company was part of the experience. Right? The laughter, the conversation was part of that. And I breathe this huge sigh of relief when I see and feel that because I'm like, oh, hey, they didn't notice that it took 24 minutes for that food. But also, here are people in this really happy environment, like truly enjoying themselves. And to me, that's one of the greatest parts of the restaurant business.
That's great. I know you've talked about like you starting, you've been in this business ever since you're 14 years old. So that means like you've loved the business, you're passionate about it. So when you were starting in Tucson, did you have a specific vision?
So I think in vision, I have to think about like what works, right? Having worked on failing or only marginally profitable restaurants before too, I had to think in my mind what is going to fit inside this box that will also provide the experiences like we just talked about, but also do it in a cost range that makes sense, right? In my world, that involves a lot of the sale of alcohol because restaurant bars get more profit from alcohol than we do from food. Or even beverages. Let's say it doesn't have to be alcohol necessarily, but it's beverages. If everybody came in and ordered a hamburger and a glass of water, we might go bankrupt pretty quickly, right? Like even NA beverages, an iced tea or a coffee or something has some margin to it, to the place. And so we had a vision and a way to create a place where people could enjoy and imbibe those beverages, but also had quality food. Generally speaking, bars had not so great quality food because it was a secondary part of their experience. And so my vision was to create something where we made real food that we could be proud of, that also had a component of we can enjoy some adult beverages in this one as well. And I think it's worked out really well for us because a concept like a Union Public House really is a Swiss Army knife that it can do all of the above, right? You could go for a nice dinner on date night, or you could go for Whiskey Wednesday and have half-price whiskey cocktails and you know, set 1 or 2 or 3 back over there and take an Uber home. And I think it works for many people because of that reason.
And when it comes to laws here in Arizona specifically, how do you deal with the state laws for you to stay compliant? Because you have a big business and so many branches around it. So like, how do you ensure that you're staying in compliance, given that you have so many employees and so many things going on?
It's a great question because there's so many levels of government regulation on restaurants, right? It happens to be one of the most highly regulated industries, like truly in the world, certainly in the country. And I know someone's going to say, well, if you have a nuclear power plant or something, there might be more arms deal at Raytheon. But truthfully, we get the state government, right? And the Department of Health Services, and you've got Pima County and their health department, but then you've got the city government and their fire department and their developmental services and parking laws, but then you've got the federal government with FLSA and OSHA. And so there are so many layers of compliance. When you get expect to be the size that we are. We're 225 team members, about to be 300 when we get this Block A location open. You get treated like a big boy, right? These government agencies are looking at you like, you know better. Like, you got to do this right.
Yeah.
And sometimes the number of employees doesn't really reflect how mature that business is, right?
Yeah.
Restaurants need a lot of team members to run it. Full service is laborious to put out. And so we can stack a lot of staff members and look really big to the government. If you were an accounting office and you had 225 employees, you're a monster. In the restaurant world, that sounds like a lot, but it's really not even that much. It just requires that many bodies when you're open 7 days a week till 2:00 in the morning. So for me, it's important to know our elected officials, right, and communicate with them regularly. Have amicable relations with both sides of the aisle, politically, governmentally, whatever it might be, because at any given moment, you could be staring down the barrel of any one of these agencies' enforcement wings, and you definitely want to play nice in the same sandbox with those guys for sure.
And are you also like looking into scaling the business more after you open this Block A? Are you looking at starting more businesses here in Tucson or somewhere else?
We would like to do more. We were on kind of a great roll. Like our chronology was Union Public House opening in 2011, Reforma Modern Mexican opening in 2014, Proof Artisanal Pizza and Pasta opening up in 2018. We bought the Maverick. It's the only one I bought someone else's business. Maverick's been around since 1962, and I've doxed myself already, but even I haven't been around since 1962. Right, so we bought the Maverick in 2019. We were on this great run. Boom, boom, boom. We were going to grow. And then this little thing happened in 2020 that sort of set back the restaurant business a bit, and so that really put us on our heels for about 4 years. And only in this last year and a half, have we been able to sort of pull our heads out of the foxhole and be like, okay, we can breathe again. Maybe we can grow. We're not going to die, right? Like, or be regulated out of existence, perhaps, is a better way to think of our fear from COVID. And maybe we can grow.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, like, when it comes to starting a new business, if you're not going to a restaurant, for students who want to really start, like, what kind of laws they should be looking at before they start, or like, what should be some of the skills they should learn before they go into that? Because from what you've been sharing is that, like, it has so many risks that if you don't know what you're doing, you may fall into the pit. So what should the student be looking at for them to gain those valuable skills?
So I think an internship in some capacity is going to be one of the most important things you can do. I had friends graduate from Eller. I'm not going to drop any names here on your podcast, but actual friends that graduated from Eller that went to go become, say, like a CPA. And then they get in their career, and a year or 2 or 3 into it, they're like, oh, this is like the same 12 people in the office every single day. And it's just tax return and tax return and tax return. It's actually kind of boring. Like, I'm not happy with that. And had individuals like that had worked perhaps in the field ahead of time, even if it didn't pay either at all or didn't pay as much as being a bartender did or something, it would have been valuable to have had some of that life experience. So like my advice would be to go out there and do the best you can in Tucson, Arizona while you're here at the U of A to get an internship in the field that you're in. Even if that's not the thing that pays your bills or your rent or your light bill, get 8-10 hours a week, a full day or a pair of half days or something in there, into the field or as closely related to that field as you want. Because you don't have to have it all figured out today, right? So many people ask you guys, what your major is? What are you going to do, right? It's like the one question. Every grandparent, right? Every boomer will say, ask you that question. The truth is, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life right now, right? I'm 49 years old. Some of the most interesting people I know in the entire world have never been able to tell you what they're going to do with their lives. It isn't 1950 anymore that you're going to go get a job with IBM or Raytheon and work there 30 years and retire with a gold Rolex and a pension, right? That doesn't exist anymore. It's a new world. You've got to look out for yourself. And you might pivot once or twice or 3 times in your life and change careers. You're probably not likely to work for the same company for 3 decades. And so getting a well-rounded life experience that reflects that, I think, is one of the most important things you could do. Getting out there into the field. If you want to work in real estate, go to a real estate office. If you're in nursing, right, like go out there and spend some time in a clinic, even if it's volunteering, just to understand what the actual day-to-day grind is going to be, as opposed to just the theoretical book grind for it, right? I think you might find that you don't like that, and that might be one of the best educations you ever got. In the same way I learned from restaurants that closed and went out of business what not to do, you might learn what you don't want to do in an internship, which might be way better than you having invested your life savings in a restaurant or an accounting firm or whatever your own entrepreneurial activity might be. That being said, Rebecca, I will say that entrepreneurship is going to create even more opportunities in the next decade moving forward than it has, because so many careers of just JOBs are going to be eliminated or reduced. Eliminate's like scare word, like reduced with the way artificial intelligence is working right now. You can see certain career paths are going to become extremely limited, right? Like you can already kind of look and see the handwriting on the wall that a lawyer, not a litigator perhaps that has to do it in person, but a lawyer might be replaced one day by the latest version of cloud AI or something like this. And that's one of the reasons that I like the restaurant business. So I actually don't see that getting replaced.
You won't be eliminated for sure.
Right? Like I think we're pretty safe for a while.
For a while.
Like robots.
They bring robots.
We didn't have those little robots you have driving around campus right now. Those little coolers with the wheels, right? I would have been a lot fatter, I think, if I had those on campus when I was here. But so we didn't have those, so I would have never guessed that was coming. But I think we're a ways away from the full service restaurant business being replaced by AI.
So now you're 49, right? And if you look back, what's that one thing you want to tell that 14-year-old kid that was washing dishes back then in those days? What's that one thing you're going to tell that 14-year-old kid to keep grinding? Like, what's the advice you would give your old self that other students can also learn from?
So first and foremost, buy real estate. Right? Like, had I owned all the businesses, the buildings where I was in right now, like when I sold our restaurant in Mexico, I got more money for the building than I did for the business, in spite of it being a very good business. And had I been a little more cautious with my money at a younger age, I think I would have invested more in the real estate, all things being equal. I think that there's a lot of upside to that one if you know what you're doing. And so I think to my 14-year-old self, I would go there. Also, don't lie about not having your ID. Might be another advice over there as well too.
But I mean, that got you here, by the way. Like, if you had lied about it, I mean, it's not good to lie. But what if they sent you away and they're like, no, you can work for us since you don't have an ID? What would you have done anyways?
Right. It was a different time though, in the early 1990s than it is today with respect to that kind of thing. But ultimately, I think that having spent time working in restaurants gave me the practical knowledge and the courage to go out there and do it on my own, in spite of the high risk of failure, in spite of the high risk. And I encourage our listeners, our students here at the U of A, to also go out there and take those risks once in a while in life. Like, it's okay to fail. It's okay to pivot at 22 or 23 or even 25, 30. Like, you don't have to have it all figured out at 21 years of age in your life. I know that grandma's going to ask you, what are you going to do and what's your major? But the truth is, life isn't like that. You don't get it all buttoned up. And employers aren't going to give you the same kind of security that they gave our parents or our grandparents. And it's on us to educate ourselves and become well-rounded individuals that will be able to pivot. So when the next internet and the next AI and the next whatever the thing is we haven't even thought about in this room come, we're not on the side of people being left behind.
When you were younger, when you were first starting off, what kind of gave you motivation? Did you read a book? Was someone mentoring you? How did that work out?
So I've always been a pretty self-motivated individual up front. Like I think I instantly wanted to adult. And even working at 14 years old, to me, was a revelation to start at a restaurant. And suddenly I wasn't hanging out with little kids at the park playing basketball anymore. I was dealing with adults and adult things, right? And I really wanted that. Like, even at a young age, I was like, let's do it. Like let's go and I'll hang out with, people who are older and more important than me. Our restaurant which was called Maria's on Grand River, got bought out by a gentleman who owned Detroit Kronk Boxing. His name was Emmanuel Stewart. Emmanuel Stewart was one of the most famous boxing promoters in the world, like the 1980s and 1990s. You would see him on HBO and whatnot. And he was from Detroit. And he brought in all these boxers, right? He managed, I'm saying we, I was 15. But he managed Michael Moore and Evander Holyfield and Oba Carr. And you guys aren't going to recognize these names, but these were like world champion boxers, like the best of the best, like title holding kind of guys. And they were coming in our restaurant. Like, I was serving these guys. I mean, I was their busboy, right? I was like hanging out with Evander Holyfield. I don't want to misrepresent that. But I was clearing their plates. And for me, that was pretty cool. That was like adulting. Like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing people that are on TV. I was so starstruck, that I thought that was just so awesome. And I've always loved that people part of the restaurant business ever since. And I think having those early experiences with kind of stars to a certain degree really drew me into the business. And the fact that the Puerto Rican bartender was like, hey, kid, I'll give you a pitcher of beer if you take out my bar mats. And I was like, oh, well, you had me at 15 years old. And a pitcher of beer, again, statute of limitations. Sorry about that, Bobby.
Are you in touch with some of them at the moment?
I am, yes. And so it's great, I think, now that, we have this connectivity over the internet that we didn't years ago. Yeah. I can find old teammates and old employees and all the people I've met over the restaurant business over the years as well, too. It's pretty neat that we can almost reach out to any person in the world right now. You guys have such a unique opportunity to have that at your fingertips. Yep. Right? To have every bit of human knowledge available to you, like at these laptops that are sitting right here in front of you. When I grew up, we had a dusty old set of encyclopedias. Like truly, like a set of old books that were made in the 1950s that they were dated the moment they were printed. They used to have to put out like an additional book. Like, okay, Pluto's not a planet anymore. Sorry. Here's like a new version of this, right? You're so lucky to have that. But the thing is, everybody has that. So what can you do to differentiate yourselves? What can you do to be better? To noting that everyone is going to have access to medical information or whatever they need from a doctor right here, and lawyer information right over here, and property information right over here. It's almost an overload of information. And so how we process that, how you turn that into your gains for your careers is really the question, I think, for the future moving forward for college students, not just you guys sitting here, but everybody at the UPA.
So using all the opportunities we have to a greater advantage. Like when you were starting this business, was any of your family members into the restaurant business?
No, not at all.
Parents?
No. Not at all. I didn't grow up with any experience in the restaurant business at all. I truly started in the dish pit. And again, as I said at the start of the podcast, I think the grand majority of the successful restaurateurs that I know came from the dish pit as well too, or the busboy, or somewhere at or near the bottom. Because when you work at the bottom, when you know what it's like to scrub cheese off of a cast iron pan for 8 hours in a row and wear a plastic garbage bag as a smock, right? And have your feet be wet and just be happy for an old slice of pizza that comes from an order that nobody picked up 3 hours ago and that's your dinner, but it was free, right? When you appreciate that, when you grew up with that, you've got empathy for your teammates that might be coming from that or dealing with that now. Right? Like I like to think, and maybe my employees would say differently, but I like to think I still have a great connection with almost all of our 225 staff members because I've done their jobs as well too. I've been in those shoes. Like I know what it's like to have those feelings and that sort of pressure. And I think that helps make you a better boss and a better leader when you've been there with your team as well.
Because you understand every situation. And also like the team too, whichever your team are, they also understand you as the boss like that because you are able to show that empathy. You're able to sometimes when you're going through certain issues and certain things in life, you're able to see that through. And they also see that as well. And that creates a very great connection between you and your employees in the long run.
I like to think so. We've still got a number of team members that have been on our team literally since Union opened 15 years ago. And I've got dozens of team members that have worked for me for a decade or more now. And And I like to think it's because we create a great work environment for them to be in spite of it being the restaurant business, which by its nature is often a transitory type business, right? So a lot of our teammates come from the U of A, and when they graduate, they often do move on. And so we lose a lot of good people that are leaving, mostly because they're leaving the industry rather than we're losing them to other restaurants.
I was going to ask, because I know restaurants has a very high turnover rate, like people quit even in the middle of like a very busy environment. So I was going to ask how you've been able to manage that with your own business over the years.
It's certainly one of the hardest challenges of the industry in total, right? Is that it's a foundation built upon people. It requires just a lot of bodies to do this job. And so because the job isn't necessarily the number one priority for many of the people that work for us in their lives, and nor what I'd expect it to be. It's not supposed to be over your food or your family, but we got to keep it at least kind of up there. And for some people it's not. And so it's a crumbly foundation that restaurants are built on, because it's built on the human labor, on the labor of all of our backs to put that together. No matter how good AI gets, it might answer our phones, right? But it's not going to scrub the cheese off the cast iron plates or make that Neapolitan style pizza or cook that steak for you medium rare plus just the way you want it, right? That's not happening anytime soon. Those are people. And so it's one of the toughest things to create consistent product, particularly when you use fresh ingredients. I'll give you an example, like McDonald's. The best-selling hamburger restaurant in the history of the world is McDonald's. They've got over 30,000 restaurants, right, worldwide. Right? How many people over the age of 10 do you know that would say that McDonald's is the best hamburger they ever had? Probably zero, right? Isn't it crazy that here's like the best-selling restaurant in the history of the world, and yet nobody says their product is the best one they've ever had? Right? Why is it so great? I tell you why. It's consistency. Because they figured that out. Right? They know that you know that when you go to a McDonald's restaurant, you know what a number one combo looks like. You know what the menu board is going to look like. You know what the color scheme is going to be. And so for often people trade greatness for the lack of screwing it up. The McDonald's hamburger may only be a 6 out of 10. And sorry, Ray Crocker, McDonald's employees over there, not knocking you guys at all. But it may only be a 6 out of 10, but it's a 6 out of 10 all the time. It's not a 9 one day and a 2 the next day, right? Like it might move one number on that scale if one's sat in a window a little too long. But even then, it's been chemically formulated to be consistent. And so most of the chain food that we eat, whether it be fast food pizza, fast food hamburgers and whatnot, have a tremendous amount of additional ingredients, stabilizers, emulsifiers, and preservatives in them to maintain that consistency. And while it might make you happy because it tastes good, right? It's salty and warm. It also isn't that great for you as well, too, in the long term to consume food like that. Like human beings weren't meant to eat this all the time, but they figured out consistency. And that is what makes restaurants successful, is trying to figure out a way to do that, but with, say, scratch production, like what we're talking about, real food made from actual animals, not or actual plants, not stamped out in a factory everywhere, like a widget, that they're exactly the same, is one of the biggest challenges, particularly when you do it with people who have their own challenges, right? You could just be having a bad day, and if you're my server, you roll your eyes at a customer request because they asked for, the steak to be made vegetarian or something, and you go, oh, that's a stupid question. Done, right? 1 star on Yelp. It's over for you real quick. So there's a lot of challenges for local places, and I don't think we were ever successful in that endeavor. We just fight to do the best job that we can to be a 7 or 8 or 9 out of 10 to everybody more consistently than the McDonald's 6 out of 10, and hope that we keep our head above water and that people enjoy it and still come and frequent our establishments.
So to add on what she was just asked, so like when somebody quits or they're fired because of certain issues, when you bring in a new person, do they make the same like exact meals? Like, are there changes to the meals when the customer comes in?
So the attempt is to make the exact same meals all the time. You see, our guests in restaurants and full service restaurants often order the same 2 or 3 things quite regularly.
Yes.
You find a few you got 6 or 10 restaurants that are in your sort of wheelhouse. They haven't burned you. They haven't given you the 2 out of 10, right? And you like this 1 or maybe 2 particular dishes, and you order that dish quite regularly. Most people are like this. And so those guests may actually be more susceptible to the plating changes in the dish than even, say, the owner. Because I might not eat that dish off the menu 4 times a month exactly the way it comes off the menu like regular customer does. So if all of a sudden you change a sauce or a stock or a portion or a scoop or a size or any of the things that make up the plate, your guests may be very susceptible to it, even more so than the employees. And so it is an incredibly challenging aspect to make the soup the same every time, the sauce the same every time. But that's our goal. We try to do it.
Consistency.
Yes.
When it comes to hiring students right out from college, what are some of the main things that you look for in a student employee?
So I look for, 1, of course, scheduling availability. We don't get to pick when we're busy. And so in the restaurant business, we need nights and weekends, right? Particularly Sundays. Like everybody wants to say, well, I'd love to work for you, but Sunday's my only day to not have work in school. And you go, man, like, I'll tell you what, you give me either Sunday morning or Sunday night. You can have one. You want to go to church on Sunday morning? I'll be your huckleberry. I'll make that schedule. But you got to leave Sunday night open for me. It's a busy time. So we need a lot of weekend availability. I also look for people who are outgoing and gregarious, right? You don't have to necessarily know how to make a margarita or how to make the margarita pizza. I can teach you that. But I can't teach you to be kind and conscientious and outgoing. Right? These are like inherent human traits that we're looking for, that we try to hire for, because those skill sets you almost have to hire. I can train people to be a little more outgoing, but some of it's naturally just in us. And so in our interview process, at least for the front of house, we try to look for those characteristics. I can train the knowledge, but I can't train the personality.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to leave with the audience before we close?
I just want to impart that I would love if all of you listeners, you students at the U of A, stuck around Tucson to help make it a better place. We're investing heavily in the city. We're building yet another new restaurant, right in downtown, right in the heart of Tucson, Arizona, because I believe in it. I think it's a great place to live and raise your families. And if more U of A students chose to stick around Tucson and build their roots and set up their families, it would be a better place for everybody.
Yeah. Thank you for working on that initiative, because it has been on my mind also recently, because the UV has got over 40-something thousand students, more than that, and the majority of them do not stick in Tucson just because there are few opportunities in Tucson, so they tend to go work somewhere else. And so if we can get more students staying around and using their talents to better develop the community, that would really be great. And also working on different initiatives and businesses. When you went to Mexico, I think you started this as a new business and it's worked out, and here you are, you had to transition it back to Tucson, and so you're employing over 200 employees. You created the opportunity. So I think if more students can look at it in that way, then we'll be better off as a community.
I think so too. I think there's a lot of opportunities in Southern Arizona, a lot of growth in the Sun Belt in the United States in general. And if more of the smart guys and girls that went to the U of A stuck around here and brought their talents to the desert Southwest, we'd all be a better place.
Thank you so much, Grant, for coming down to the UAZ podcast. We really appreciate your time. We know how busy you are.
Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. Always happy to help out fellow Wildcats.
We learned so much from you, from your business experiences, from some of your failures and the risks that you had to go through. But at the end of the day, you were successful. So we learned so much, and we appreciate your time for sure.
Thanks. I appreciate you guys too. Have a great day. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Wildcat, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.